Tyson Barrie, will he stay or will he go? And just how much of an impact would that make on the Edmonton Oilers? We'll have that. Plus, Ryan McLeod, how did he do this season? We'll have his season report card. Plus, some predictions for the rest of the week. And how did our predictions go from last week? We'll have all that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I'm your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. Happy Monday, everybody. I know we're coming to you a little later than we normally are, but that's life. It is what it is. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about whether or not Tyson Barrie will be traded this offseason. Just how much of an impact does he have on the team and the team that he will be traded to if he does get traded. We'll have that and more on today's episode and in just a little bit. Plus, Ryan McLeod, if you've been following me since I took over to this show, you would know that Ryan McLeod is one of my favorite players for the Edmonton Oilers. So how did he do this season and why is he one of my favorites? We'll get into that. Plus, some predictions for the week as, let's be real, nothing really happened last week. So let's pray for some more stuff. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you so much for listening to Locked On Oilers, making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcasts. Alrighty, let's get into Tyson Barrie as a little bit of a polarizing figure for the Edmonton Oilers, kind of a will he stay or will he go situation. A lot of Oilers fans are kind of flip-flopping between on whether or not he goes or if he stays. He's got a cap hit of about $3.3 million off the top of my head. I didn't check that before. I should have, but that's okay. Tyson Barrie is I'm more of a I'm a statistics guy, but not to the point where it's absolute gospel. There's a mix between statistics, analytics, and the eye test. That is the world. But Tyson Barrie this past season, a little more under the radar, especially compared to what he did last season, as last season he was one of the highest scoring defensemen in the league last year in his first season with the Edmonton Oilers. In 56 games played, he had 8 goals, 40 assists, 48 points, almost a point per game for the Edmonton Oilers. Just a really nice surprise for the Oilers. Offensively, he was what the Oilers have been looking for a very long time. And really, it was a spot that the Oilers forced Darnell Nurse into for a long time. Darnell Nurse is a very dynamic defenseman. He's very strong in his own end when he's healthy, and he's very strong with the puck. He can move the puck forward and really almost dictate play in the offensive zone just with how strong he is on the puck. He scored a bunch of game-winning goals for the Edmonton Oilers. Darnell Nurse, fantastic offensive defenseman. However, when he's overworked and really forced into those tough areas and basically forgetting his defensive duties, that's when Darnell Nurse is recognized for all the wrong reasons. Tyson Barrie came in and just said, you know what, Darnell, everything offensive that you have done so far, kind of you keep doing you, but I'll take the heavier workload, the better workload, and go out there and you worry about you being the number one defenseman on this team, and I'll worry about kind of defending goals, but also putting pucks into the net as well. He quarterbacked that power play for the Edmonton Oilers the last couple of seasons, and one of the best power plays in the league. This season, in 73 games played, 7 goals, 34 assists, 41 points. So in about not quite double the amount of games, he had 6 points less. So a downer year, I guess, for Tyson Barrie. And a lot of people were really on Tyson Barrie this season. Understandably so. I guess the Oilers weren't the best defensive team this season. That's not Tyson Barrie's game. You can't expect a guy like Tyson Barrie to go out there and consistently shut down the opposition's offense, because that is not the type of defenseman he is. He's the offensive defenseman that looks for the outlet pass and gets the puck out of the zone. Has a nice shot from the point. Good vision. He's better with the puck on his stick than he is with it off his stick. Is that the way you want a defenseman? Not always, but not everybody's the same. This past season, you know, I love these goals for and goals against stats per 60 minutes. And you take a look at them, and Tyson Barrie was pretty consistent all throughout. In all situations, the goals for per 60 minutes, he had 4.25. And in all situations, he had 2.51 goals against per 60 minutes. At 5-on-5, it kind of dips to a 2.92 goals for per 60, and his 5-on-5 goals against per 60 stays about the same at 2.5. Now, so if a team is trading for Tyson Barrie, what are you getting? Looking at those stats, you know that Tyson Barrie is going to be playing on that power play. You just know that Tyson Barrie is going to run that power play, whatever team he's getting going on. I mean, unless they have a player like Roman Josi or Cale Makar, who just is going to be the offensive guy. But Tyson Barrie, looking at those numbers, you know that most of his point output comes on the power play, not at 5-on-5. In all situations, so that includes the power play, he has 4.25 goals for per 60 minutes. At 5-on-5, you cut that in basically half at 2.92. So is he a 5-on-5 defenseman? Not offensively, but at least he's consistent in all situations and on 5-on-5. You're not going to put him on your penalty kill, really. You're not. But I mean, he's still a very solid defensive defenseman. I hear a lot of people going, whoa, a solid defensive defenseman? Yes, a solid defensive defenseman. If you watched at least a game of the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs this past season, then you would know firsthand, because you watched it, Tyson Barrie was one of the strongest defensemen for the Oilers throughout the entire playoffs. That is not whoa, what are you saying? That is not a crazy statement at all. Tyson Barrie was one of the best and the most consistent Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs this past season. Not only offensively, in fact, he was barely offensive at all. I mean, in his defensive zone, defensively. In all situations, Tyson Barrie dipped that goals against per 60 all the way down to a 2.07, which was good enough for second on the team behind the best and most consistent defenseman for the Oilers in the playoffs, Brett Kulak. At 5-on-5, 1.83 goals against per 60 minutes, second on the team behind Brett Kulak again. So, are people still wanting to talk about his defensive skills? Because I can take a look right now at these numbers on a team that allowed probably the most amount of goals in the playoffs on the Edmonton Oilers. He was out there for the least amount of them per 60 minutes. Second least, I should say, behind Brett Kulak. But who was his defensive partner? Brett Kulak and Tyson Barrie were defensive partners. Now, can you take a look at that and go, oh, okay, well, Kulak is leading? Sure, maybe. I'm not going to get into that. You can or can't, whichever way. But Tyson Barrie, since Jay Woodcroft came in, was one of Edmonton's most solid defensive defensemen in their own zone on the team. And that's just stats right there. So Tyson Barrie, surprisingly enough, if he gets into the right system, can play defense. You already know his offensive upside, so you're kind of getting a pretty solid defenseman. So why would the Edmonton Oilers trade him? Well, you need cap space, and you can basically have Evan Bouchard do the exact same thing, barring the defensive issues, for much cheaper. And then, well, and he's much younger as well. But you also have a great crop of young defensemen coming up. You got guys like Evan Bouchard. You have guys like Philip Broberg, Dmitry Samorukov. If he makes it through this offseason without getting traded, no promises, but we shall see. You got Marcus Niemelainen, who's one of my favorite players for the Oilers. I've loved him since we drafted him. Philip Kemp. Vincent Desharnais was a name that Ken Holland mentioned in one of his press conferences. So a lot of names for the Edmonton Oilers to take a look at coming up as well. Before we move on, what teams could be looking at trading for Tyson Barrie's services? Well, let's be honest, Arizona does not have the best defensive core, and they have a lot of cap space. Might be a team you might want to look at dumping a bunch of cap space on. Plus, you got a guy like Jacob Chychrun on the other side who's waiting to get traded. Maybe a perfect fit. Also, the defensive core for Arizona is Connor Timmins, JJ Moser, who is a draft pick this past season, who wasn't even on people's draft boards last season. He was on mine, so not to pump my own horn. Victor Soderstrom, who is a second-year defenseman now. Shane Gostisbehere, Dyson Mayo, former Edmonton Oil King, and Anton Strawman. So putting Tyson Barrie in that defensive core already makes it much better. Montreal, another team that could trade for Tyson Barrie, just traded the contract of Shea Weber. We all knew he was basically done for. But Jeff Petrie also going to be leaving a rebuilding team as well. Tyson Barrie might really excel in a place like Montreal, just a place where if they put all of their trust into him, he'll be well. Plus, Josh Anderson has been rumored to be coming to Edmonton in a trade. So if there is a trade with Montreal, depending on Josh Anderson, he's making $5 million a year. So it might be a contract in, contract out. Seattle, a struggling team while they're their new team, so always nice to shore up some guys. Plus, they got draft picks as assets as well to trade for these guys in the offseason as well. Also, not at all close to the cap. They're almost like away from the cap floor. Detroit as well got some cap space, not a very strong defensive core, but also a team on the up and up as well. You got guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, Dylan Larkin, Mo Sider. Imagine if Mo Sider played next to Tyson Barrie. That would be great. Anaheim, another team who's rebuilding again as well. Another team as well. John Gibson, little trade partner as well. So another team there who might be looking at his services. And if you've been following our Twitter at all at Locked On Oilers, Ottawa, as well as Ross from Locked On sends throughout a proposal to their fans and everybody saying, how about Tyson Barrie and Jesse Puljujarvi for Connor Brown and a second round pick? I'll let you stew on that. Maybe we'll talk about that later on this week. We'll talk about that. But Ottawa, another place. I would prefer to, I don't know. I'm impartial. I understand it's a business and you need cap space. And if the Oilers are going to be bringing in a better guy, a younger guy, a guy who's going to help the team, then I'm impartial. But let's move on to Ryan McLeod. How did he do this season in his, second season, I guess, and first full season, I should say, second season in general. We'll get to him and his report card in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about our partners over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL Stanley Cup Finals. Did that go at all the way we thought it would? Did anyone else put the money on the over for 7 goals for the Colorado Avalanche? That's insane. That is insane. Plus, I mean, let's be real. The NFL season is just right around the corner. Teams are making their ways, or players, are making their way to OTAs, to mini camps, stuff like that. So fantasy football owners, I had a fantasy football draft last night. I'm looking at you. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores, and much more. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline is your fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf as well. And The Memorial Cup starts tonight, actually. The Oil Kings play tomorrow against Shawinigan. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. So take a look out for those props as well. Memorial Cup. Interesting lines you can bet on too. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alrighty, let's take a quick little sip of coffee, hydration break. On this wonderful, wonderful Monday, it's beautiful outside. Thank goodness. But speaking of beautiful, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the beautiful, beautiful hockey smile of Ryan McLeod. Ryan McLeod, as I have put so many times or have said so many times over the last couple of years, well, these past episodes, but since the Edmonton Oilers drafted Ryan McLeod, he's one of my favorite Oilers, if not my favorite Oiler, because Ryan McLeod can do it all. He can play on the penalty kill. He can play on the power play. He can play 5-on-5. He can play in your own end. He can play on the offensive end. He can play in the neutral zone, and he's effective everywhere he plays. He is a strong skill. Oh my goodness. Like I said to the guys over at Locked On Avalanche, sometimes I watch Ryan McLeod and I go, man, this kid, sometimes I watch him skate and I go, oh, there goes McDavid. Oh, never mind. That's Ryan McLeod. Ryan McLeod has all of the skills and all of the tools to make it, or to be really a successful and strong two-way forward. Honestly, I call him Nuge 2.0. Nuge 2.0. There we go. I call him Nuge 2.0. Nuge 0.0. I kind of like that more a little bit. Nuge 2.0, because really, this kid can do it all in any situation. The points will come. The points will come. You saw it near the end of the playoffs as he got a couple goals near the end. Very important goals as well for the Edmonton Oilers in that Colorado series. One goal that looked like it was going to be a game winner. I don't want to talk about it. But this season, 71 games played, 9 goals, a career high for Ryan McLeod. Well, all these will be career highs, as he didn't really play a whole bunch in his first full season, I guess, last season. 9 goals, 12 assists, 21 points this season for Ryan McLeod. Like I said, the points will start to come for him. His speed is just unbelievable. His hands can be there to follow. He reads plays well. He played with Warren Fogle. Again, we'll get into Warren Fogle and some of the issues with Warren Fogle when we get to his season review or season report card in a couple of episodes. But his finishing just wasn't there. And there's so often where you'd see McLeod or Fogle backdoor wide open. You'd get it to him and you'd be like, oh, just missed. You know, there are points there for McLeod. There are goals there for McLeod. Either bounced off his stick, bounced off somebody else's stick. But those will come. He's a young kid. He was just drafted in, 2020? So, strong kid. I love Ryan McLeod. In this past regular season, as I said, goals for and goals against per 60 are some of my favorite stats. This is where it gets interesting for Ryan McLeod. Let's take a look at the goals for numbers. In all situations, Ryan McLeod sits at a 2.08 goals for per 60 minutes. That is good enough for 22nd on the team, basically last on the team. At 5-on-5, he has 2 goals for per 60 minutes, which is good for 24th on the team, which is basically last place. Then on the power play, he sits at a 5.01 goals for per 60 minutes, which is 12th on the team, which is the 3rd worst. So that offensive upside, that scoring, those goals weren't there in the regular season. They weren't. However, this is where it gets a little exciting. Let's take a look at his goals against per 60. In all situations, 2.39, which was good enough for 4th on the team, the entire team. At 5-on-5, a 2.18 goals against per 60 minutes, which is good for 5th on the team. On the penalty kill, a 5.28 goals against per 60 minutes, Which again, that sounds like whoa, 5 goals per 6. This is the penalty kill, so you'd be playing shorthanded the entire game. That's what this stat is saying. He allowed 5.28 goals against, per 60 minutes. That was good enough for second on the team. A forward in his first full season is going out there on the penalty kill and making a difference. Excuse me, he is. He's making a difference defensively. How often do you see a young kid come into the league and be effective in his own end and responsible in his own end just like that? The lowest he was defensively on the team was 5th. Doesn't that get you a little excited? Yeah, I mean, you can have the guys like Connor McDavid's, the Leon Draisaitl's, the Evander Kanes, the Zach Hymans. Put them all. You can have all the scoring power that you need. If you're not preventing goals and if you're not scoring more goals than the other team's putting in your net, you're going to lose a game. But the fact that you can have a young player be so responsible and you can actually put your trust in a young player to go out there and prevent a goal and then potentially with the speed and skill that he possesses, go and put the game away or eventually potentially win a game as well, that's exciting. He's only played 1 year, 1 full year. And actually, at one point, he was sent down. And now he's making a difference. A bottom 6 guy who's going out there and actually making a difference. Isn't that nice, Oilers fans? Isn't that something that just you never thought you would see again? Since like Michael Pekka, who we had for a year, who we saw in an Oilers uniform for a season. Now you're getting basically now this may be a little off the cuff and off the top of my head, so don't get coming after me for calling Ryan McLeod a Michael Pekka type, but he is. And the Oilers succeeded when they had a Michael Pekka type in their lineup. Well, in fact, when they had Michael Pekka himself in the lineup. Let's take a look at the playoffs for him this season, because then you take a look at what he did defensively and you start to really understand, and offensively as well, you start to understand what he does. Offensively, kind of the same. 1.76 goals per 60 minutes, which was 16th on the team in all situations. At 5-on-5, 1.35 goals per 60 minutes, which was last on the team. But on the power play, like I said, he can play in all situations. 9.37 goals per 60 minutes. That was good enough for 3rd on the team. Ryan McLeod in the playoffs on the power play. Not bad. Now let's take a look at that defense. 5-on-5, or in all situations, 3.28, middle of the road. 5-on-5, 2.05 goals against per 60 minutes, which was 3rd on the team. And on the penalty kill, 8.17, which again, not the best penalty kill to begin with. Well, actually, especially near the end of the playoffs, I should say, that penalty kill was very effective. But 8.17 goals against per 60 minutes, 3rd on the team in that section, or in that stat, I guess. Ryan McLeod is going to be a very important member, a very important cog, a very important component on this Oilers team if they want to succeed. The Edmonton Oilers need to re-sign Ryan McLeod ASAP. And Ryan McLeod this past season is getting a season report card grading of a B. He can get better offensively, especially. I want to see that scoring touch from him. But the fact that he can just shut down defensively like that, like an elite shut down defensive forward already, Oilers fans, you are in for treat. Alrighty, we have one more period in today's episode, and that'll be our predictions. As we made some fun little predictions last week, only one of our three came to fruition. So, and to be fair though, it's kind of the more exciting one. So we'll get into more predictions and just how our predictions did last week in just a second. But first, we have an important favor to ask of you. We put together a survey so we can learn more about our listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and what you don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey will qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take your audience survey, head to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now. Thank you so much for your help. Alrighty, let's move on to the final period of today. Let's get into our predictions. It's a Monday. We got a full week ahead of us. We're that much closer to the draft. We didn't mention any draft prospects today. We will continue with our draft prospect profile later on this week. We have some exciting, potentially some guests as well coming up this week as well. But those aren't in our predictions. Our predictions from last week, actually, we'll start with last week because we had some fun predictions. We had some predictions to get the offseason started and with some bangs, I guess. Those didn't happen. The first prediction from last week was Jay Woodcroft would re-sign with the Edmonton Oilers. We didn't get that. We got some rumors around Thursday, around Wednesday, possibly on Friday. I saw a screenshot as well of Kenny Holland interviewing or talking to somebody at dinner. It looked like a Jay Woodcroft. It also could have been an Andrei Kuzmenko. Wonder about that. But no, we didn't get a Jay Woodcroft re-signing last week. So will we see it this week? We shall see with this week's predictions. Last week as well, we predicted that we would see either a Mike Smith or Duncan Keith retirement. Neither of those happened. It was basically all quiet on set. So there's not much really else to add there. No retirement so far for Smith or Duncan Keith. Really, what we did get was it seems like we're going to have some issues around the cap circumvention or this cap whatever they're going to call it once Duncan Keith does retire. Because I think that is what is kind of not perpetuating, but delaying the call, delaying the official announcement. Because I think Duncan Keith will be retiring at the end of the season. But what happens when he does? It seems like the NHL, Chicago, and Edmonton are all kind of going, no, well, this should happen. Oh, well, this should happen. Well, under the CBA, this should happen. I think that once that gets figured out, then we will see a Duncan Keith retirement. And the third and final thing from last week, prediction from last week, was the Edmonton Oil Kings would win the WHL title. And guess what, baby? They did. They did. Don't look at my sweat marks. Yes, they did. The Edmonton Oil Kings are on to the Memorial Cup as they play the Shawinigan Cataracts, Xavier Bourgault's team, tomorrow night in St. John in the Memorial Cup. So how will they do? We'll get to that in just a second, but let's get into this week's predictions, as I'm going to add a third or fourth one here. I don't have any pens, so that's okay. But the first prediction for this week is we will get the Jay Woodcroft signing. We will get it. It's either going to happen, I think, either today or tomorrow, Wednesday at the latest, no way by Thursday. I think Jay Woodcroft will resign. I mean, it's basically just a when will it happen or when will it be announced? It might have already been announced as I'm recording this right now. The second thing is that we will see an Edmonton Oilers transaction. Now, I'm going to just keep that vague, whether that's a re-signing, whether that's a trade, whether that's it's not for me to say, but I am going to predict that the Edmonton Oilers are going to have a transaction at some point this week. Man, we're not going to count Jay Woodcroft, okay? And I'll preface that right now. It's going to be a player. So get excited, Oilers fans. We're going to see a movement of some sort in this next week. The third thing, and this is my off-the-cuff one that I just thought of right now. The Edmonton Oilers, the transaction, or one of the transactions that'll happen, will be the Edmonton Oilers signing Russian winger Andrei Kuzmenko. Now, I know it seems to be basically 50-50 between the Oilers and the Canucks. Dan Milstein, his agent, and Andrei Kuzmenko himself took a photo in Vancouver saying it's basically decision time. That's done with their meetings, or they're done with their meetings. It's basically just decision time. So I'm guessing it's probably going to be Vancouver. But no, I'm predicting that it's going to be Edmonton. I say Andrei Kuzmenko signs in Edmonton, and that means Evander Kane re-signs in Edmonton. But that is not this week as well. Only Andrei Kuzmenko becoming an Oiler will be my prediction this week. My fourth and final prediction, we get a fun little extra. My fourth and final prediction for this week is the Edmonton Oil Kings will get their first win in the Memorial Cup in the tournament this year. Tomorrow night against the Shawinigan Cataract, the champions from the QMJHL. As I mentioned, Xavier Bourgault's team, he scored 12 goals in the playoffs. Going to be a tough test for the Edmonton Oil Kings, but let's be real. If you've watched any of the Edmonton Oil Kings this past year, you know that they are basically the best team in the country. Alrighty, we shall call it there. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. For your second listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On NHL, as Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts, local experts every Monday through Friday. It is free and available wherever you find your podcast. Alrighty. I hope you have a wonderful week, as it is just a Monday, a beautiful looking Monday today. Hopefully it stays warm for the rest of the week and we continue on with this beautiful summer weather. We shall see you tomorrow, as we might have a couple surprises. Like I mentioned, we'll do a quick little look ahead throughout the rest of the week. Tomorrow, we will also be releasing tomorrow's episode a little later, as full transparency, my mother flew down to the States last week, so I've been taking care of the dogs for her while she's down and got some big ones. So I'm kind of in between their house and this place right now. So just so you know, tomorrow will be another later episode, but after that, we will be right back to the early morning episode. So if you listen to us on your way to work or whatever you do early in the morning, we shall be there with you. Alrighty. Let's call it there. I hope you have a wonderful week. We shall see you soon. Stay safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.